I'm Jason Klom, and this is Comedy on Vinyl. The year is 1976. The album, the Rutland Weekend Television Songbook. The artists Eric Idle and Neil Innes. My guest this week is Boff Whalley. Thank you so much for doing this show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So if people do not know who you are, I mean, my little general description was musician, writer of musicals, runner, and formerly of Chumbawamba, if anybody is not familiar. Is there anything else I'm missing, though?
No, that sounds about right. Yeah.
Sounds about right. Good.
I thought for a minute you were going to say it, and former member of Chumbawamba, if anybody remembers them. Which would be fine,
I will say, you know, I am just of the right age to have purchased Tub Thumping and then not having been aware of anything before that because I might have been the least punk teenager on the planet. And not knowing that you started, you know, within a decade of the Sex Pistols. You guys are all roughly the same age as the Sex Pistols, a bit younger, but I mean, it's the history of Chumbawamba is fascinating. And
say that again. The history of Chumbawamba is fascinating.
Is fascinating, but even more so when I think the reason I sought you out specifically was knowing that you that somebody in the band must have been a fan of Firesign Theatre because you did a song called "Everything You Know Is Wrong." But then you decided to pick this record, which I am so happy you picked because it's a delight.
Yeah, because it's one of those classic albums that I think kind of disappeared when it didn't really deserve to.
Mm-hmm.
It's also the album I think that for me that attaches. There are so many, you know, when you're growing up and you go through different albums and phases and artists, and this is an album that kind of has attachments to lots of different other things, which were all influential. So,
when did you first hear it? I mean, were you watching the show and then picked up the album, or was it something you picked up separately?
No, I was watching the show because I was a really big fan of the Bonzo Dog Band and then Neil Innes and of Monty Python. So when kind of the Bonzos and Monty Python started doing things together, I really became kind of obsessed with it all. And this is all kind of pre-punk, but it made me realize that even though I didn't play any instruments or I wasn't a musician or anything, I just thought, yes, that's what I want to do. Music and comedy.
Oh, I love that. And the thing is, but most people are not going to immediately say, well, okay, sure, but you did quote unquote serious music. I'd like to know where the intersection is for music and comedy for you. Like, what stuff have you done that is would you consider like the most comedic? Because I'll tell you, like, I didn't get it because I was a dumb teenager, but I want to know more about the philosophy behind the band.
Well, what happened is that obviously we were really influenced by punk and punk rock, and then we were, but obviously we all had all these kind of baggages of influences from other places as well, and me especially, I was just really into the whole Frank Zappa, Bonzos, kind of theatrical side of music.
Okay.
So when we started playing, we said we don't want to just be a band that stands on stage with instruments. We want to do kind of theatre with it as well. Let's try and illustrate each song with some kind of, you know, with dressing up and acting things out and illustrating things visually, because that's the sort of thing that people will go away and remember. And obviously the influence for that came from you know, in terms of music, came from things like Frank Zappa and the Bonzos, where watching different members of the band doing different things whilst they were actually playing and thinking, yeah, this is a good thing to do. But what happened is because we were really political at the very beginning, we were going through it was the miners' strike, and it was Margaret Thatcher, and it was a very kind of repressive time. So a lot of our songs were very serious, and it was only after about 3 years we started bringing comedy into it, or not necessarily comedy, but humor.
Yeah.
And we also decided that it was ridiculous that we were kind of lived in a kind of commune cooperative type situation, about 8, 9, 10 of us, and we were playing these concerts where we were singing about very kind of politicized things and important ideas, and we were very straight-faced. And then as soon as we came off stage, and the rest of the time, we were just basically taking the piss out of each other and having a really good time and being silly and having a laugh. And it did literally took us 2 or 3 years before we sat down and said, why don't we take that that sort of joy and fun that we have in everyday life and try and make it part of the stage thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we did gradually. And that, so it became the point where it was like, look, when we go on stage, we have to have fun. We have to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Otherwise people watching it won't enjoy it. They'll think it's a lecture or some kind of full-faced pamphlet put to music.
Do you think that's a natural evolution for punk? For most punk bands?
No, not really.
No, a lot of them stay more, because again, I know shit about music, so you will be the educator here. So you think most of them, it becomes a thing where they do kind of stay a little serious as they go on, or sell out and pretend to be punk?
Well, most artists in general, once they hit an idea which people want to go and see, which people will go to a concert to see or will buy the records, they kind of mostly stick to that idea anyway. And we were always adamant that we would never do that. Right from the very beginning, we said, whatever we do, let's keep changing, let's keep challenging ourselves.
Yeah.
And so that's why, for instance, people that heard Tub Thumping or even still hear it think that's what Chumbawamba sounds like, when in fact Chumbawamba sounds like 100 different things, depending on which you find.
I mean, sorry, go ahead.
No, go on. Sorry.
No,
I'd say that was all. We were really influenced by the things that we'd listened to before punk. So we were able to kind of bring, so for one thing, we were really into the idea of 4-part harmonies and things like that because we'd grown up listening to the Beatles, and but that whole kind of I know I keep saying Zappa and the Bonzos, but there was just this kind of thing of, look, you take music and make it surreal and Dadaist, and you can use pastiches and you can use parody, and you can still say really serious things, which is what those two bands were doing.
I mean, you have so many fewer limits if you're embracing the idea that you don't have to have one specific image, one specific sound, right? I mean, shouldn't that be the goal of most musicians? I don't want to speak for everybody, but most artists, I think.
Yeah, it should be, but it's kind of not. I mean, thinking of examples, I always think about people like Roy Lichtenstein and Andy Warhol. If you look at the stuff they did before they became stylized, they were really eclectic. They were trying all different kinds of kind of graphic ideas and illustrative ideas. As soon as they sold a show to a big buyer, they stuck with the idea for the rest of their lives. They didn't change at all. And I'd find that really stifling. I think that, we had our first two albums were quite kind of still a bit melodic, but quite loud and aggressive. And then we sat down and said, right, we've done two of those. What should we do next? And then what we said is, let's do an a cappella album of English folk songs from like the 1400s.
Holy cow. Just
because it would really challenge us, and it would really challenge the audience who just thought they knew who we were and that we were, that they could pigeonhole us. And it's a real risk doing that, but it's really exciting. So we just carried on with that attitude.
I mean, that is the kind of thing where all of it, let's say we were making a mock documentary about a Chumbawamba type band. They do these first two albums, and then all of a sudden, English folk songs from the 13 and 1400s, that's when you hear crickets immediately. That's when you piss people off. I want to know how your audience actually did react to this becoming your new thing.
Well, one thing is that every time we kind of did a sea change in our music. So at the point where we embraced dance music and started doing lots of kind of beats and all that sort of thing, and remixes. And every time we did make a change, we got a different audience. But we kept this core of people who got what we did, who understood what we were doing. They didn't necessarily have to like it all.
Sure.
But they kind of understood that we were trying to do something totally different. And that they knew that they would buy an album and think, is this first track going to be a kind of, harmony doo-wop thing from the 1950s, or is it going to be some kind of heavy punk thing, or is it going to be really folky and acoustic, or, we just keep throwing things at people and they think, yeah, I understand what's going on here. In the same way as I did growing up listening to all the people that I listened to.
Yeah. Okay, so you already knew the Bonzos then before this comes about. I'm assuming, and
Yeah.
Python, right? So you're right there along with this stuff coming out. What I mean, obviously, you're perfectly fine with delightful, strictly comedic music. Is there an obvious influence, or is it just generally the whole idea of it? It's just the idea that I'd like to keep humor. Or have you ever done strictly comedic music? Have you ever tried that?
We kind of have, but it's always been kind of track to track,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll be like something on an album that was done specifically that's funny, or that's a parody or something like that. I
Mm-hmm.
remember the first song that we ever wrote that was specifically humorous was must have been about 1984 or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
maybe 80, yeah, 84. And it was really early on, and we were, you know, quite serious at the time, but we wrote this song which was about there was a government pamphlet came out which was about what to do in the event of a nuclear war.
Oof.
And it was this pamphlet that went around to, it was called Protect and Survive, and it went around to everybody. Everybody in Britain received this pamphlet, and you got them given at school as well. And it had a list of things, advisories as to what you were meant to do. And it was sort of like place yourself and your family under the table.
Mm-hmm.
Put the, you know, make sure the chairs are set at a certain distance. You know, if you hear the air raid warning, do this, blah blah. And one of the ones was, in case if you've got time, then whitewash your windows. And the idea was at this time that they thought that whitewashing your windows would kind of deflect, you know, the nuclear the nuclear fallout. And so we wrote this song, which was just that, to a kind of beat, but it just had the list of advisories, and at the end, the last one just said, and remember, whitewash your windows, whitewash your windows, whitewash your windows, so that the neighbours can't see that you've shit your pants. And that was like the first joke song that we had, and we really enjoyed doing it. So we were like, yep, let's do some more of those.
See, this is, yeah, okay. This it's so hard. You know, I did a documentary a few years ago where I was trying to draw some obvious, what should be obvious lines between humor, punk, people who do pranks, people who do, you know, living art. And I don't think it's easy to just draw straight lines through anything. I do just think there's just a natural crossover between, you know, what I would generally call anarchy, but obviously anarchy is a very specific real thing, something you were living, maybe still are. I don't know enough about your life now, but it was definitely a huge part of who you were. Can you explain it a bit to me? Because I feel like people like myself have a general pop idea of what anarchy is.
Yeah, I think that, because so what happened is when I was maybe, I don't know, 14 or something like that, because I was brought up as a Mormon in the Mormon church.
Wow. Okay.
And I used to go to this church in a place called Rutland near where I lived, and this is kind of pre-punk, but it was long after the Bonzos had split up and died and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I went into this shop and saw a copy of The Donut in Granny's Greenhouse.
Mm-hmm.
No, actually, no, I borrowed it first off a friend at school who said, look at this.
Uh-huh.
I ended up buying it at this shop in Rottenstall, but he showed me this album and I'd never seen anything like it. And I remember playing it, and I remember thinking, this sums up how I feel, which is to be very caustic and critical of straight society, especially society. And Monty Python were doing the same thing.
Sure.
Is to poke fun at the establishment, do it in such a way that's clever and eclectic and weird, and that brings in lots of artistic influences and all that sort of thing. And then it must be maybe 2 years later that I discovered anarchism. And again, I thought this fits in with that whole concept of Dadaism being an anti-establishment thing and anti-war, but embracing absurdity as a way of trying to explain it, rather than being po-faced and rather than writing, you know, critical studies about things.
Mm-hmm.
And anarchism was brilliant for that, because it's not like Marxism where it's a set of ideas which were written by one bloke and that can't change with the world, really.
Right.
Anarchism kind of changes all the time, depending where you are and what you're doing, but you can apply its same kind of general ideas to wherever you are and whatever you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, that's that. Then I mean, it opens up a world of ideas and concepts and things that might fall into that category that people might even, I probably haven't even thought about. And I think about this shit all the time, but it is nice to hear it from somebody who lived it. And it's an ethos. Are there other? This is probably going to sound just like complete bullshit to you, but I would say my favorite band of all time is probably XTC, and they're a band who went from sort of punk, but definitely kept evolving and got eclectic. I mean, even the Beatles could get eclectic at times. It seems like it's a necessary thing of good art just to keep that in mind. And
because when punk first started, people tend to think that punk was punk rock as opposed to punk. When punk first started, it was nothing if not eclectic. It was all girl bands. It was poets. It was acoustic punk. The first year or maybe year or two of punk in Britain was just, you just couldn't second guess what was going to happen next within it. Everything sounded quite different. The idea of it being four blokes with guitars like the Clash and the Pistols, that's the thing that's been taken up by people. But they were just kind of one aspect of it.
Yeah.
And I think, I remember the first time I saw XTC, they were doing a cover of All Along the Watchtower on this TV show called Old Grey Whistle Test. And I'd heard of XTC as just being, wow, this is, new punk band right early on. And the way they took that song, which is, so iconic and everything, the way they took that song and just ripped it apart and built it back into something completely different, I just thought, this is great. These are clever, and they're worth watching.
Yeah. He it's so funny is like, if you listen to Andy Partridge also get interviewed, he's so embarrassed by what he calls his barking singing at the time, but I don't know, man, there's something about it that to me I kind of love it.
Yeah, all that yelping and
It's very primal, and I like it. As you get older, sure, maybe you're going to do less of the primal shit, but like there's still something in there. And
it's the thing. It's the idea that you can, which we always loved and which I still love, which is that you can take classic pop harmonies and melodies, and if you can write melodies and tunes and construct harmonies, then you could just be a very nice normal pop group, or you could take that and start deconstructing it and messing around with it and making it a little bit weird and writing lyrics which shouldn't really belong in pop songs. And do you know what I mean? You can play with it in all sorts of different ways, which is what all the kind of best artists did, I think.
They're it's so funny because, again, I do not think if anybody knows your history, they would necessarily pick this as a record that you would love if they didn't know that this was genuinely a part of your influence. That's the thing. It's not just something you loved. This is a genuine influence for you. And I love that. Is there anything on this record in particular that stands out as a favorite for you, or a few favorites? There's so much good stuff on here.
It was when I kind of realized how Neil Innes worked, which you could kind of see in his earlier works anyway, and his stuff with Monty Python. But it made me realize that he could kind of do anything he wanted, and he was basically Eric Idle saying, "Go on then, do whatever you want," and hence it's just full of clever twists and turns, and again, you just never know. You imagine Eric Idle going, "I've got this idea, and it's a sketch, and it's about accountants," and Neil Innes going, "Oh well, okay, well I'll write a little thing about accountants, but instead of it being just like boring, I'll make it into a sea shanty." And you just think, where did that come from? It's beautiful, and it's actually, and you can sing along to it, and it's just really funny and ridiculous. But what Eric Idle was doing was trying to he kind of taking Monty Python a step further and trying to lampoon the entire television media and just really kind of have a go at it. And it's incredibly accurate.
Yeah,
it really is accurate, and at the same time really funny and weird and stupid.
And it's even I love that it's more specifically English even than Python. At least it feels that way to me. Because it's supposed to be small town England.
Yes, it is. Yeah, we're a very small ramshackle TV company, and we can't really afford much. But but let's see what we can do with it. You know, a really small cast and a really small bunch of musicians that made it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's one song on the album which is a parody of kind of American musicals, which is that 24 Hours in Tunbridge Wells.
It might be my favorite thing on the whole record.
And it's so beautifully crafted. It's really beautiful. It's like, let's take this idea of these fantastic, great musicals with the dance numbers and apply it to the most boring little village in southern England. It's fantastic, yeah.
That has since changed its name to Royal Tunbridge Wells, maybe in response to the song.
Oh, it has, hasn't it? Yeah, that's true, yeah.
Which is so fucking funny. Yeah, I had to look it up, and I'm like, I know this is going to be a nothing town, but I need to learn a little bit more about it. And it was just hilarious that it has since changed its name to Royal Tunbridge Wells.
Yeah. When I said about the connections of things, there was the start of the Rutles, and not necessarily with the appearance of the Rutles on Rutland TV. It was more that there's a song on there which is a kind of John Lennon parody. The children of rock and roll, they never die, they just fade away. And it really connects with there's a long John Lennon parody on an album by National Lampoon.
Oh yeah. Is
it TV Dinners? I think it might be TV Dinners.
Oh shit. And people are going to hate me for forgetting because we've definitely talked about it.
I think it's that one, and I bought it in a second-hand shop in Lancashire where I was born, and I remember hearing that Lennon parody and thinking, this is great that someone's kind of having a go at the Beatles. Even though I loved the Beatles, I think they're, people ought to be, having a go at them a bit more.
Yeah.
And so when Neil Innes did it, who was also a massive fan of the Beatles, I just thought, this is great. It kind of brings all these ideas together. Loved it.
It was Radio Dinner. Yep.
Radio Dinner. That's
the one. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it's Tony Hendra doing his John Lennon. If I'm not mistaken, which is not bad at all. Although I might have a soft spot in my heart for Neil Innes, just because to do an entire catalog of music, by the way, which toward the end of his life, an entire catalog of music that is Beatles parody and is just as good as the Beatles. It's upsetting.
Yeah,
that's
it really
is. Disturbing level of talent.
Some of the songs that he's parodied, his parodies are definitely equal to, if not better than the Beatles, which is amazing.
I know he wouldn't have accepted that. I know if I'd have said that, I'm sure he wouldn't have accepted it. He seemed too nice, but it's too good.
That's true.
Yeah. So you pick this up again, and you find that you discovered this other stuff at a very critical time. Were you then, I'm assuming, a lifelong Innes and Python fan? Did you continue to listen to their stuff and watch their stuff?
Yeah, definitely. I remember because I'd missed the Bonzos and I'd missed the Beatles. I just kind of grew up catching up with them.
Yeah.
But Python, my dad once said, "You've got to watch this TV show. It's really funny." And I'd never seen or heard of it. And I remember sitting down and watching it on like a Thursday night for like 25 minutes. And I remember coming away being completely baffled, not getting it at all, just thinking that was the weirdest thing I've ever seen. But my dad kind of persisted and said, watch it again, try it again next week. And after about 3 episodes, I was like, yes, okay, I get it. They destroy their own punchlines on purpose. And they halfway through a sketch, they just crash into something else and just never get to the end of it. And I wasn't used to it, and it was great. It kind of made me rethink the way you can do things. Yeah.
Well, and I think it's exactly that spirit that works for people who were over here probably 5, 6, 7, 8 years later than you first watched it, knew none of the English references, couldn't understand a damn thing in terms of these very specific references to English life. And at the same time, it resonated just as well somehow. The absurdity just worked. It's a communication tool.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of a secret club as well when you see kind of a humor or comedy beyond, a comedian on a stage telling gags. Here's a gag and here's the setup and here's the punchline. When you kind of start relating to comedy that plays with form and really kind of stretches ideas and wrecks their own, wrecks punchlines and things like that, then you realize that you're almost letting yourself into a secret world that other people get as well. and that's really nice because you just think, oh, okay, we're kind of go one step further into that that black hole that is, you know, satire basically.
Yeah. Was there anybody else in any of the groups that you hung out with, including the band, or were they also fans of this same stuff, or was this more of a you thing?
It was definitely more of a me thing, but other people were into it in the band, but it was definitely me that was kind of just realizing that having the knowledge of all this stuff that I'd been listening to for 3 or 4 years before punk, to bring this into it, I think I just remember thinking this is really interesting stuff, because a lot of people saw punk as year zero, and I totally understand that. I can see that because they were basically like throwing out their albums by, you know, I don't know, Yes, and, you know, and Journey and ELP and Pink Floyd. So they were kind of like, let's start again with something that's not, you know, that has a completely different attitude. Whereas I think I'd never kind of listened to any of that kind of thing really. When punk came along, I just immediately thought, yes, this ties in with the stuff that I was listening to anyway. It fits.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, honestly, and I mean, there are obviously, again, so as you point out, so many different aesthetics to punk that it is hard to nail it down. But I mean, the Ramones have so much 50s doo-wop in their sound that it's hard to call it a new thing. It is definitely a new take and a new feel. But there's also such a huge sense of humor about them too that it would be stupid to say that there's no sense of humor about early punk. Are there any like real, and this is something actually, you know what, I know exactly who I would normally ask this question of, but huge punk comedy crossovers that I'm not thinking of, like, you know, either groups or projects that are heavily punk and comedy at the same time, not just humor but comedy.
Yeah, there was a band called, I don't know if you've heard of them, called Alberto y los Trios Paranoias. I don't know if you know those.
Wait a minute. I've read it. I feel like I've read that name in a Wikipedia article somewhere, but I don't know enough about it.
Incredible band. And they actually, when Devo came over to Britain, when they had the first single out, which was Jocko Homo, and which I loved, and they came over to Britain, and their second gig was in Manchester, and they were supporting Alberto y los Trios Paranoias, who I loved anyway and I'd seen before. And we all knew that, you know, word was coming over from America through the Musical Express and Sounds and our music magazines about this band called Devo from Ohio, from Akron. And there were these pictures of them all wearing these, you know, yellow kind of shiny jumpsuits, playing weird instruments and with strange hats on. And they came on and did their set. And then Alberto y los Trios Paranoias, who were headlining, this is in Manchester Free Trade Hall, which was the same place where somebody shouted Judas at Bob Dylan, actually. But
oh my God.
That's a digression. But they came on as the headliners and they walked on as Devo. They all had the suits and the hats and everything. And they did one of their Alberto songs absolutely in a brilliant Devo parody style.
Oh my God.
Bear in mind, Devo had one single available in Britain at that point. And I just remember thinking, this is fantastic. This group are amazing. They were kind of pre-punk, but then they took up punk like madly, and they did a whole theatre show called Snuff Rock, called Sleek. It was called Sleek,
okay,
but it spawned a whole thing called Snuff Rock, where the whole idea was that they were a punk rock band and they wanted to be more punk than anybody else. So they decided that they would kill the lead singer on stage and he would die. But of course, during the course of this 90-minute narrative with loads of music and it's really funny, it kind of dawns on them that they can only do it once, which is beautiful. And then it's just this dilemma about what are they going to do, and Snuff Rock, and they kind of parody punk music whilst at the same time loving it and being part of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you get a chance to hear any of their stuff, look them up because they're amazing.
Well, I mean, that's remarkable because there's also, I mean, I think there are groups of people who have definitely taken ideas like that, or taken what punk represents Inarguably, I think too far. They become this new performance art, and it does involve actually hurting people, or at least claiming to, and blah blah
Yeah,
blah. I love the idea that that band is already there. Like, no, 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 20 years ahead. This is what punk could become. Isn't this a fun idea? This
yeah,
is a dystopian idea of the very thing that we're interested in. Let's explore it now. Get it out of the way. I love that. That's
yeah,
beautiful. Wow.
absolutely. Yeah, it is.
Wow.
It's brilliant because it means that when people did start kind of, using violence and self-inflicted injuries on stage as a way of kind of saying, "Look at me, I'm more punk than
Hmm.
everybody else," you could kind of laugh at it because you just thought, "Yeah, this has been done a long time ago, and it was done with a lot more panache and style." So,
Right. Oh my God.
mm.
That's again, these are things that you don't often hear about, and you have to interview people who were there. You have to talk to people who actually saw this shit live. That's an amazing idea for a
Yeah,
show. My God.
yeah,
I hope there's
yeah,
tape of that somewhere. Have
yeah.
how about as a group or as a performer yourself? I mean, did you ever explore sort of performance art? Was that always a part of it? Was that ever a part of it?
Yeah, that was always kind of a part of it before uh, we before we kind of got Chumbawamba together.
Hmm.
Myself and Danbert, who was in the band, who now lives in Twist near Seattle.
Oh wow,
Um,
okay.
we had a band called Chimpits Banana
Hmm.
with lots of friends, with Midge and with Nadeem, and um, it was the whole point was to be a comedy punk band.
Hmm.
So, but we realized we couldn't play any instruments. We genuinely couldn't play.
Oh my
We
God.
went to a musicians collective meeting, having said, "Oh, let's start a band," but we hadn't really done anything about it. And at this musicians collective meeting in Lancashire, somebody passed a piece of paper around and said, just everybody that's here, just put your name down to say you were here, and if you're in a band, put the name of your band. And so one of us wrote, our names, or whatever, and put band Chin Pete's Banana, just as three words that didn't mean anything whatsoever. And
Uh-huh.
literally within a month, they rang up and said, we're trying to get in touch with this, band Chimpits Banana. We've got you a gig. And so we suddenly had to meet round at Dan's house and say, right, who's going to play guitar? Who wants to have a go at playing drums? Um, and we knew we couldn't really play instruments, but we had lots of ideas. So the first gig, we called it a bed gig, and we all turned up in our pajamas and with a mattress, and somebody slept on the stage for the entire gig. And all the songs that we played were about nighttime and going to sleep, things like that. And then the second gig we did was we just did covers of really awful kind of cabaret songs, like
Hmm.
"Tie a Yellow Ribbon Around the Old Oak Tree" and things like that.
Sure.
None of it sounded like punk really, but we
Right.
were just kind of in that punk spirit of thinking, you know what, you don't have to spend 4 or 5 years in your bedroom learning to play guitar solos. As long as you've
Hmm.
got the ideas, you can do something with it. And that's how we started. So the whole thing started as being a comedy thing.
Could you today, if asked, like if somebody slapped a guitar in your hand right now, could you mimic the what I'm assuming is terrible quality playing you did on that first show? Could what I mean, I would. I first of all, I wish there were a recording of it. If there's not, that makes me sad. But do you have a concept of what it sounded like?
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And one of the interesting things is that after about the first 3 or 4 years of me learning to play guitar, electric
Hmm.
guitar, which only started when I was about 17,
Hmm.
I never got any better. I realized that
All right.
the way I play guitar was was enough to be able to carry ideas, and was enough to be a songwriter. And I
Yeah.
always saw myself as a songwriter rather than a guitarist. So after making about 3 or 4 albums with Chumbawamba, we were in the studio at some point with this engineer called Neil Ferguson, who was the engineer back then. He later joined the band, but at the time he was the engineer. And we were playing something on one of the albums, and I was having difficulty playing it the way. And he said, "Well, maybe if you do it, with I don't know, try an augmented fifth or something." I was like, "Look, Neil, I have no idea what that is. You obviously know, don't you?" And he said, "Well, yeah." I said, "Please, just come and play it." And he came and played this part. And seriously, after that, apart from a couple of tiny bits for about the next 10 albums, he played all the guitar,
Holy shit.
even though he wasn't in the band at the time. I was perfectly happy for him to do that. I was like,
Hmm.
why should I play it rather when you can play it so much better? As far as I was concerned, I was really and we all were. We were really wedded and embedded in the ideas.
Yeah.
And you know, if we wanted to do a parody of a, like, for instance, a doo wop 1950s song, then we knew we could listen. You know, we knew what we wanted it to sound like, and we would get it to sound like that. It didn't mean we could all play fantastically well like some great 1950s session group.
Sure.
So again, that was the kind of punk spirit that just held through, which was like, look, the ideas are more important than the music.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that early Chimpix Banana stuff, where I could hardly play guitar at all, and we could hardly play drums or anything, but but the ideas were, I think, were clever enough to make it a show and for people to enjoy it.
There's some pure fucking joy in that, though, right? Like that's art, right? I mean, feeling it, at least in terms of feeling it and having that shit come right out of your chest.
It is art. It's great. One of the great things about, I mean, not just what punk did, but what a lot of kind of music styles after that, including things like hip hop and, you know, Riot Girl and things like that, are movements where, and dance music, are movements where everything gets more evolved and incredibly well produced and incredibly musical, and then something comes along and says, do you know what, you can do this in your bedroom with a laptop, or do you know what, you can do this on a mic and just put a backing track of you know, some Grandmaster Flash backing track on, and you can do your own rapping on the top of it. And it's just, it's you know, especially for kids growing up, it's like, yes, take control of the ideas and the self-expression rather than the technique and the formality of it. And it's such a releasing thing to be able to do.
You know, it's interesting because it's, I don't know, I could be wrong, but I feel like I was the beneficiary of that in terms of comedy by the time I was finally getting to make comedy records in the late 90s and early 2000s as a teenager and then early 20s, because there were websites that were like, hey, if you want, send us your MP3s, and if people buy it, they buy a CD. And I was like, of course I want a fucking CD of my own comedy. Why would I not do that? So I put together a hastily, I won't say hastily, I did a pretty good job putting together my own record. But I mean, that then led me to being addicted to making my own stuff and knowing that if nobody else is going to make my stuff for me or sell my stuff, then fuck it. I have the outlet, you know?
Absolutely.
Now,
Yeah,
what I've never experienced though is being a band who literally, and again, I'll put a link in the show notes so that people can listen to the podcast I listened to where you and Adam McKay spoke quite a bit. But like literally your band who goes from doing a song called Fuck EMI to signing with EMI and getting to take advantage of a big moment. Like how did that feel? I rarely ask that question, but how did that feel?
It was brilliant. I have to say, for that whole period, especially the first kind of year of it, with Tub Thumping was just hilarious. Not just on reflection, even at the time. We had a lovely thing where, because we didn't go around kind of touting our songs around to record companies and stuff.
Yeah.
What happened is that, who's the woman that wrote, who sang "I'm a bitch, I'm a..."
Meredith Brooks, if I remember correctly.
Meredith Brooks.
Yeah.
Meredith Brooks. So there was a tape of Tub Thumping before it was ever released or anything like that. And for some reason, she heard it, because our manager used to be Motorhead's manager, Motorhead and Hawkwind and stuff. So there was some connection there, and she heard the song, and at some party or something, and someone said, "Oh, what's that?" No, she said, "What's that?" And they said, "Oh, it's some unreleased thing by this band in England." And she took it to her record company and said, "Have you heard this? It hasn't even come out yet in England." And they listened to it and got in touch. This was the people from Republic Records, which became Universal. And they flew over from America to. We were playing in Switzerland on May Day. We were playing in Zurich, I think it was. And they flew over to meet us. We were thinking, why are they flying over to meet us? You know, it just seemed crazy. And they met us, and it just became this kind of roller coaster thing of, this is just surreal and mad, and we've never been in this world. Let's just really enjoy it and have fun with it.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole EMI thing was really funny, because English EMI didn't want to have anything to do with us. It was Germany EMI that picked up and heard the tape. Again, probably through Universal, I'm not sure, but they then said, "Oh, we're really interested in this. We'd like to put your album out." And the only caveats we had were, yep, that's great. Nothing can change on it. We do all the artwork and everything. You can't change a single thing.
Holy shit. Okay.
They said, yeah, okay. They really wanted it, so they got it, and they they decided to put it out in Germany, and they are EMI in Germany is a lot bigger than EMI in Britain.
Mm-hmm.
So they got in touch with Britain and said, right, I know you've turned this down and you don't want anything to do with it, but we are basically commanding that you put this out because it's going to be a hit.
Mm-hmm.
So EMI London, against all their, sense of what they really wanted to do, had to put it out. And so we love this. We just thought, this is great. This big, kind of royal company having to put this record out against their wishes. So the first week it came out, it got into the charts, and we were asked to play this television show called Top of the Pops, which is the flagship British pop show.
Yeah.
Everybody that I knew, everybody that we knew grew up watching it, and they invited us to play on it. This is like a week earlier, we nobody had heard of us, and then suddenly they were like, right, can you come and be on Top of the Pops in 2 days?
Holy shit. Wow.
We thought this is really funny. So we all turned up at the Top of the Pops in a van, and we all walked in, and there were some people on the main doors with holding flowers and all this sort of thing. And we walked past them. They weren't there for us, but we'd been there about half an hour, and suddenly these people with all the flowers came to our dressing room and said, "Oh, we're really sorry. We didn't realize that was you walking past us. We're EMI, and we've been sent to give you these flowers." And we just thought, this is brilliant. They don't even know what we look like. These minions have been dispatched with flowers. Oh, and so, we just loved every minute of it, just kind of basically taking the piss out of every famous person that we met along the way, and just having a really good time with it.
I mean, you sort of have to, right? I mean, and it's not even a matter of like, I'll tell you, I think the first time I heard of any connection between Chumbawamba and Anarchy was basically, hey, steal our fucking record, we don't care. And I was like, that's got to be a gimmick. And then now know that no, it's not a gimmick, you didn't give a fuck, is maybe one of the most delightful things I've ever heard.
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing about that was that so we were on tour in America at the time, and Alice had said that in an interview, which we all agreed with. Obviously, if you're buying your records from, mom and pop stores or whatever, then
sure,
then pay for it. That's really important. But, if you're getting them from some like mega store or whatever in New York, then if you want to steal it, why not? And obviously this caused a real furore and everything. And the day after, Monty and Avery Littman, who were these two lovely brothers who ran Republic Records, who were our record label, they rang us up, and we were in California somewhere. We had one phone then, because it was in those days, you shared a mobile phone amongst all the people in the band.
Okay.
I remember Dunstan took this call. We were somewhere outside in California, and he said, "All right, wait, everyone, this is Monty and Avery. They're ringing up about last night, about Alice being on that program last night." So we were all like, "Oh, brilliant, this is great." So this is the conversation from our end, just went Dunstan going, "Yeah, right. So Are you asking politely if we're going to take it back, or are you just saying it because you think you have to say it?" And he said, "Right, yeah, okay, yes. Well, you know what our answer is, don't you?" And he's laughing all the time, and he goes, "Right, okay." And he puts the phone down. He says, "Monty and Avery," he says, "they're just laughing." He said, "They've been asked by their higher ups to formally request that we politely say we're really sorry that we said this and we didn't really mean it." And they knew full well that we'd say, "No, we did mean it, and we really enjoyed it," and we'd say it again. So, but they had to ask anyway, and we were just all doubled up, just thinking, "This is great. This is great fun." Being able to not take that whole world, that corporate world, seriously and still have a laugh with it. We just thought, well, we're having a good time. It's not going to change the world if we just say no to everything. So yeah. In short, we just had a really good time with it all.
Ah, that's so good. I mean, well, and it also becomes you were then free to do. You're still free to be yourself and free to have the band that you want to have if you're not then immediately doing what you talked about earlier, finding that one thing and sticking with it. Because maybe it would have been a constant chart-topping sort of issue, but rather than that, you stuck to your guns and just kept making shit you enjoyed, which you cannot. Yeah. You have to love that. I appreciate the shit out of that.
Yeah. And I think because it was really hard work, and because we'd been together for so long, and so we could have been forgiven for being a bit cynical about all that industry anyway. But our response to it was kind of, look, we're not going to get sucked into this. We're not one of these kind of young bands that's going to just, sell the soul and just try and make the same hit record over and over again, and be really worried if we, and get just do all the gigs that we're supposed to do and in horrible places. We just thought, let's just have a laugh with it. And if we did things that people didn't like, and I'll tell you one thing we did, which was this. To me, this is kind of the high point of my memories of being in Chumbawamba, really, which is that we played on a bill in Germany. It's a huge kind of stadium gig with Sonic Youth and Smashing Pumpkins.
Wow. Okay.
And we were often ended up playing with bands that we really loved, and we thought, this is great. Wow, we get to play. We played after Sonic Youth, who were brilliant, and they were lovely people, really lovely, and just thinking, this is great. And we played, and then Smashing Pumpkins all day, when they'd been sound checking and everything, had been complete arses, really, really ignorant, awful people, surrounded by ignorant, awful management, classic kind of rock star arrogance going on. And we were just fed up of it. This is ridiculous. They sound checked for so long that neither of us nor Sonic Youth could have a proper sound check, for instance.
My God.
And half of it was just them jamming, which is really annoying.
Wow.
And so this went on all evening, and we just like, okay, we've had enough of this. This is ridiculous. We were in the dressing room before they came on, just in the corridor and by the side of the stage, just kind of talking and chatting. Anyway, all the management comes out from the Smashing Pumpkins and sweeps everyone to the side. Says, right, everybody back in your dressing rooms. Everybody has to be in the dressing rooms for Smashing Pumpkins to walk along the corridor to get to the stage. We're going, what? They're like, no, seriously, everybody back in your rooms, the Pumpkins are coming out. So we all had to go back in the room. So we got back in the room, right, what are we going to do about this? So the plan was that Dambert would strip naked, and we wrote punk on his chest in big black letters. Said, right, when they're halfway through one of the huge guitar solos, Dambert, it happened, and it's on TV as well. It's on YouTube as well somewhere. It was on national TV in Germany, and they're playing this big guitar solo, and suddenly this guy walks on naked, and he just walks calmly to the middle of this huge stage and stands at the front with punk written on his chest, and the band are looking at him like, what is going on here? What the fuck is this? And he just kind of waves to the crowd really sedately, and then walks off again, and security come running on and grab him and all this sort of thing. And of course we were in stitches and really just completely laughing at all this. And the guitarist got the joke. I don't think, what's he called, the lead singer?
Billy Corgan.
He takes himself, well, he did used to take himself really seriously, so he didn't really acknowledge it. But the guitarist, James Ehar, just said, whoa, we salute the naked man. and we got thrown out of the venue. Loads of heavies came, and they kind of dragged people kicking and screaming out of the venue, and we got ejected. And the TV production people shouted, you'll never appear on German TV again. And that was the year before Tub Thumping. So then Tub Thumping happened the year after, and they got in touch again. Would you like to appear on this national TV thing? Well, yeah, that's how it works. That's that industry through and through.
Oh boy. I mean, and then how do you not? I mean, you have to be laughing the whole way. Otherwise, how do you function? I mean, that is exactly what this podcast is about finding, the piece of comedy that maybe keeps you alive or keeps you running. I've had comedy albums that have definitely kept me going through times that are difficult,
Yeah. Absolutely.
Did you ever make friends over any comedy records? Doesn't have to be this one, but was there ever like a lot of trading going on between your friends and yourself, or?
Yeah, we had right at the beginning, before, again, just pre-punk, when I was still at school, me and a few friends just decided that we wanted to do some kind of Monty Python, Rutland Weekend Television thing, and I kind of knew about 3 or 4 chords on a piano, and we used to make tapes, and that kind of got me. it got me. It was with this. Who was it with? It was this lad called Mick Binns, who was brilliant. He was the lad that lent me Donut in Granny's Greenhouse, the Bonzo Dog Band record, and it just felt like, okay, this clicks. I get this. And so from then on, whenever I went somewhere, I first went to college, and later on, if you'd ever mentioned these kind of, if you ever threw in references to Viv Stanshall or Monty Python or something, you got this kind of instant bond where people understood exactly what you were on about, and you could throw in little lines from somewhere, and knowing that you had some kind of connection there.
That's so good.
Early Frank Zappa was really good for that as well. Those first 3 Frank Zappa albums, which are such a treasure trove of fun and social commentary. Brilliant.
I have been waiting, honestly, to have somebody say, let's talk about Frank Zappa on the show. Nobody has yet, so I've never heard Frank Zappa and so I sometimes save these things, like I've owned this record for 6 years, and I love both of them, but I've been waiting for somebody to pick it before I talk about it. Yeah. Do those early tapes exist? That's my next question. Please tell me those early tapes of you performing your youthful songs are
I've thought a few times about trying to go through lots of boxes of cassettes, what actually there is in there, and I've never actually done it. I'm sure it's really embarrassing and awful. So.
Sure. I mean, I will tell you, I do an entire podcast with my best friend where we talk about our very embarrassing, awful comedy from when we were very young, and how terrible it is, and how if we did this humor as an adult, we'd be a terrible person. But I understand why people sometimes don't want to dig into that stuff for themselves.
Well, I've got a 10-year-old son now, and he's really funny, and he's got past the point now where his humor is just about farts and poo. He's now onto kind of mimicry, and
love it.
It's really good to watch. I just think, oh, he's really got it. That he's the kid who mimics the teacher to all the rest of the class, and they all laugh. So I just think, yeah, it's good. He's got it in his blood somewhere.
Oh my God, there's so much. By the way, there's an entire song on here about a washing machine.
Yeah,
I mean, how the skill to make that sound good.
Yeah.
And I wish I knew if he'd had the idea and then said, okay, cool, well, let me put these chords, or if he'd had a set of chords in mind already and then put the two together. Again, sadly, don't have him around to ask now. But boy, oh boy, there's just so much good stuff on here.
I mean, yeah, because that album is, I've used the word eclectic quite a lot in this conversation, but it's so eclectic that you just think he can do anything. He really can. And I mean, I saw him live lots of times.
Did you? Okay, that was going to be a question of mine. All right, please.
And what was really interesting was that because he didn't have a band with him a lot of the time, he would turn it into a kind of reminiscing and talking show a lot of times, especially towards the end. A lot of it was talking about things that had gone on in the past and then illustrating it with a song, and which was brilliant. But I did hanker for that thing where, because I've heard kind of bootleg tapes and bootleg CDs and stuff of the Bonzos rehearsing. You're aware that Viv Stanshall, who's this incredible genius ideas man, wasn't very musical, and they start several songs, and the drummer or Viv Stanshall or someone come in at the wrong time, and they lose time, and the beat suddenly goes to the on beat when it should be on the off beat, and Neil stops them all and says, whoa, everybody, stop, right, when it gets to this bit, that's where you come in on this word, and you do, and that's one of the reasons I really loved him, because it wasn't just funny and comedy and satire, but that level of kind of knowing how to organize people and organize the sounds to make what he wanted to make, which I always really admired.
Especially again with people who are not musical. That is a friggin' skill. That is a skill. Wow.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Okay, I normally ask people to say, give me a couple sentences. Let's say nobody knows somehow Eric Idle. Maybe they don't know Eric Idle beyond Python. Maybe they don't know anything about Neil Innes. Why listen to this album? Why give this one a listen?
Because I think that I think a lot of people know about certain things like Eric Idle and Monty Python or Neil Innes and um, I'm the Urban Spaceman or the Rutles, and I think this album, like nothing else they did, kind of explodes those that idea that you can second guess these people. And you listen to this and you just think it's a parody of a TV station, but sounds like a TV station, and it sounds like it's got a cast of about 100 people and lots of different musicians sharing lots of different ideas. And in fact, it's basically two people with a kind of tiny little band. And I just think it's so funny all the way through. And the other thing is, because they're all written for TV, none of the songs outstay their welcome.
Right.
Some of them are like a minute long, and I love that as well. I think that's great.
There's a oh god, I'm gonna get the year wrong, but there's a bit on here called Gibberish, which is honestly, when Eric Idle just goes on saying nothing as though he's a TV presenter, it is one of my favorite things.
Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah,
it's so good.
Yeah,
I wish I'd have written any of the bullshit down. But
yeah, because once you hear that, then you can't listen to a kind of TV interviewer again,
right?
Without understanding. Oh, it's not about what they're actually talking about. It's about these mannerisms and these poses and these gestures. It's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, there's you've probably heard it, the old sketch Rock Notes, where he's where Toad the Wet Sprocket got their name and all that, which is just a list of dumb shit in fake music history, and him talking. I think that has influenced my comedy more than anything.
I don't know that. What's that? I don't know.
It's called Rock Notes, and it's him just going on about all these fake bands that don't exist, and as though they do, and somebody injures themselves falling off a back of a motorcycle, falling off the back of a motorcyclist most likely, and everything he says, he just keeps going and going, and for about 3 minutes, and it is beauty. It is. And this honestly is like it is a greatest hits of all of Eric Idle's strengths and all of Neil Innes' strengths, which are seemingly unlimited. I don't know how how they're that good at what they do.
It does appear. So, like, for instance, the Rutles, which was just here's a 2-minute sketch. I'll dash off a quick song that sounds a little bit like the Beatles, but then the idea that they would pick up on it and someone would say, well, how about going away and writing 15 songs that chart the entire career of the Beatles, and him saying, I could, give me a couple of months and I'll do that. You just think, he could have done that about anything. You could have given him anything to do and he would have been able to do it. It's fantastic.
And the weirdest thing, though, is like that he was in just that, and I think I asked him a bit about it, but that he is this weird sticking point for the Beatles and for Python, that they all, and I mean, this album's produced by George Harrison's company released this. So, I mean, it's very, in the nicest way possible, very incestual. Like, it's like they all just knew what one another needed to make. And it's very beautiful. There's so much. There's one song also on here where he also plays music in the worst possible way, and he says, "I've suffered for my music, and now you will too," or something to that effect.
Yeah. Do you know what? I'll tell you what's funny as well is that George Harrison is a bit of a linchpin in that whole mid 1970s comedy thing, because he bankrolled this. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Have you seen the Rutland Week in Television right at the very end where George Harrison actually comes on and starts playing pirate song.
The pirate song,
which starts just like My Sweet Lord, and the joke is that obviously he's just been sued for all the royalties for it, for it being plagiaristic and everything. So he comes on and does this funny little thing, but at the same time he was also bankrolling the Monty Python film. Was it Life of Brian? No, Holy Grail wasn't it?
Yeah, Holy Grail, and then I think he might have also did Life of Brian, but yeah,
and then he also stumped up the money for With Nail and I don't know if you know that film.
I did not know that. I didn't know that he did that. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, he was kind of really, when they were really struggling to get funding for it, he stepped in and said, right, here you go, here's some money for it. So he's kind of made, and he gave them, I think he was the only compilation album that he ever allowed his music to be on, was the With Nail and I compilation album.
Wow. Quite
rare. And I love the fact that, and with the Rutles parody and everything, there's all these connections between all the different things. Mm-hmm. It's lovely. Really nice.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And honestly, any time to talk about Neil Innes makes me happy. This is not going to come out for some time unless you've got something urgent to promote, in which case I can push it sooner. Other than that, I would say probably a couple of months, probably before it comes out.
I have nothing to promote. So.
Nothing to promote. Where should people find your work then?
I'd say online. That's the easiest place to go and find it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think because I do a lot of work now with theatre companies. I'm working with Welsh National Opera, and I've got a choir called Commoners Choir, and we sometimes do comedic things, and it's all out there on the internet somewhere.
Okay. I mean that is they can go to your should I send them to your website, or would you object?
Yeah. No, I've got a website. Yeah.
It's just boffwhalley.com. Love it. There's so much up here. You know what? Honestly, this has been a delight, and I would talk to you for hours, but I'm not going to keep you. It's much later there than it is here.
I've really enjoyed that. It's just nice to talk about something different other than the usual Chumbawamba stuff. So it's great.
Sure. Well, I know it was nice knowing. I don't know. I like you always hear about comedy and music having these crossovers, but that it had this specific an influence. And knowing, obviously that we both obviously have a huge love for Neil Innes and Eric Idle. It was nice. You're welcome back anytime, of course, no pressure, but I would love to have you back at some point if you'd be interested. So
yeah, great stuff.
And I will say thank you for doing the show, and thank you to my audience. Thanks everybody for listening. And as always, have a good thing. Comedy on Vinyl is a production of StolenDress Entertainment. It is produced by Mike Warden and is hosted and edited by Jason Klom. Our theme song was composed and performed by Richard Levinson. You can email us at podcast@comedyonvinyl.com. You can also send snail mail to StolenDress Entertainment, P.O. Box 805, Burbank, California, 91503. Subscribe to Comedy on Vinyl on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and anywhere else you can find podcasts. Give us a 5-star rating and write us a review. It helps. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Comedy on Vinyl, or find everything in one place at comedyonvinyl.com. A major portion of Comedy on Vinyl has been underwritten by Stand Up Records. Please visit standuprecords.com for all your comedy needs, and tune in to the new Stand Up Records channel available on the Roku, where you can also find select episodes of this podcast. Visit StolenDress.com to listen to our other podcasts, watch videos, and imbibe freely of our multimedia content going back 15 plus years. StolenDress Entertainment.
Hey, it's my turn. Ah!